I tried to seduce Jacob 3 times, and still didn't get him into bed. The 3rd time I seduced him, I took advantage of his drunkenness and climbed onto his bed. I was wearing a lace nightgown, the suggestive details faintly visible, and even without lifting the hem, everything underneath was on full display. I thought this time would surely succeed. Just as I leaned over Jacob's body, he threw me onto the floor, staggered up drunk, and put his clothes back on. "Vanessa, how shameless you are. Don't blame me for not respecting your mother's feelings." He swayed out of the room and went downstairs to find someone else. I knew exactly who he was going to, the one person he could truly surrender himself to. And that person was Vivian, his deceased brother James's wife, now a widow. Listening to the woman's ambiguous moans and pleading cries from downstairs, my heart turned to ashes. The next morning, Vivian walked out leaning against the wall, her neck covered in marks. She shot me a glance smug and defiant. So I kept my promise and gave up on Jacob, that prized catch. I lowered my head and went to find my mother. "Mom, I lost. I promised you I wouldn't go after Jacob again." My mother sat at her dressing table. Before the mirror, she retained a mature woman's grace, yet carried a breathtaking beauty. "Vanessa, I gave you 3 chances to seduce Jacob, but you weren't good enough. I can't help it, I warned you from the beginning." I kept my head down, listening to my mother scold me, pain pulsing through my chest. She was Charles's 2nd wife, who had married into the Blackthorne family 10 years ago, bringing 10-year-old me with her. She got along well with Jacob and James, so there were never many issues. The only problem came from me. I had fallen for Jacob. My mother was too smart not to notice. So she tried reasoning with me, telling me Jacob loved someone else, one who wasn't me, but Vivian. Vivian had grown up with Jacob and James, the 3 of them childhood friends. I once believed Vivian would marry Jacob, but 3 years later, she married James instead. On their wedding day, I was overjoyed, thinking I finally had my chance, so I looked toward Jacob, but he showed no happiness. His face darkened like storm clouds. I swore to myself, one day, Jacob would fall for me. My mother saw right through me and made a pact. 3 attempts to seduce Jacob. If I failed, I must let him go. If I succeeded, she would find a way to make me Jacob's wife. After Vivian married James, Jacob suddenly grew much closer to me. At a family banquet, he even confessed his love for me in front of everyone. We became a couple, yet no matter how I tested him, how I tempted him, he never crossed the line. Then James died in a plane crash, leaving Vivian a widow. After my 3rd failed attempt, passing by Vivian's room, I saw a shocking scene through the slightly open door. A man held a woman in his arms, bodies moving rhythmically. The woman was dazed, moaning uncontrollably. "Jack. Cobb. Stop." But the man didn't stop. His movements grew fiercer, yet his expression remained tender. His sweat-soaked face was filled with deep affection for one woman. "Don't you like it?" At that moment, I finally woke up. Jacob's confession had only been to silence others, and to provoke Vivian. His desires existed, but not for his girlfriend, they all belonged to Vivian. "In 7 days, you'll go abroad to study. When you return, I'll set up arranged meetings for you. Don't worry, none of them will be worse than the beloved Jacob you've been chasing." I nodded silently. 7 days enough time to completely leave Jacob's world. If I had never fallen for Jacob, I would have already been studying overseas, then followed my mother's plan, marriage, children, a smooth life. I passed Jacob as he was coming back. I was leaving to prepare my visa, while he had returned to see Vivian. I didn't rush toward him with joy as I once did, but walked past as if he were a stranger. Jacob turned to look, his eyes full of confusion, unable to understand why I had changed so completely. He called out to me, clearing his throat slightly. "Vanessa, I spoke too harshly last night. Don't take it to heart. I truly didn't expect you to do something like that. I always thought you were an innocent girl, that you would wait until after we were married. We had all the time in the world ahead of us." I forced a faint smile, nodded, and left without looking back. Jacob was always like this. Every time I tried to draw closer, he would push me away with righteous anger, even humiliation, and then the next day, act as though nothing had happened. Marriage was merely an excuse to keep me waiting. He and Vivian couldn't be together openly because of their circumstances, so they needed me as a shield. I went to the visa center and completed the application. As I turned to leave, I glimpsed a strikingly familiar face, but in the blink of an eye, the person was gone. Holding the visa, I returned home and heard voices coming from Vivian's room. Jacob's voice was low, as if spoken against her neck. "Vivian, just wait a little longer. Once I silence those people, I'll announce our relationship publicly at your birthday banquet." Vivian asked, "What about Vanessa?" Jacob paused, then answered, "Send her abroad. That way no one will remember her or that we ever dated. Don't worry, I've kept myself pure for you. I only dated her to provoke you and to quiet some rumors. I never did anything with her. She tried to seduce me several times and I never slept with her. That should tell you where my heart truly lies." Hearing that, I smiled bitterly. I had long suspected Jacob's feelings, yet still, his words cut deep. In his eyes and in his heart, there was only Vivian, never me, Vanessa. Thank goodness I woke up in time, or I would have fallen into an irreversible fate. I returned to my room and searched for lists of foreign universities and programs. I had always been interested in aircraft design and engineering. It was my undergraduate major. Now that I had decided to study abroad, I wanted to pursue a graduate degree in the same field. I prepared what I would say and went to find my mother, only to see that Jacob was already there. Seeing me enter, my mother suddenly said to Jacob, "Since Vanessa is here now, and you're taking Vivian out to the banquet to relax, why not take her along too? That way, I can give your father a proper account." The implication was clear. It would be indefensible for Jacob to take his widowed sister-in-law out without including me. If he wanted to bring Vivian, he had to bring me too, and Jacob had no choice but to agree. I understood. My mother didn't trust that I had fully let go of Jacob. She wanted me to witness once more whole. Will me truly belong to Vivian, to make me finally surrender and accept her plan. Jacob and Vivian walked ahead, chatting and laughing, occasionally Vivian being teased by Jacob to the point she'd pinch his arm. At the car, Jacob instinctively opened the door. After Vivian got in, he naturally took the back seat. Only when about to close the door did he suddenly remember I was standing behind them. Why not let Vanessa sit in the front passenger seat? I nodded, not arguing with Jacob, and got into the front passenger seat. Once the car started moving, the driver casually remarked, "The young master and madam have such a good relationship, they even insist on sitting together. Truly childhood sweethearts." Only then did they realize something was off. I was Jacob's girlfriend. Either I should have sat in the back with Jacob, or Jacob could have taken the front seat, yet in the end, I ended up in the front. Vivian quickly spoke up, "We're all close, it doesn't matter who sits where." Jacob added, "Yeah, this was Vanessa's idea, you agree, right?" Even through the rearview mirror, I could see Jacob giving me a meaningful look. Suppressing the thoughts in my heart, I explained to the driver, "Yes, I get carsick easily, so I prefer the front seat." Whether I actually suffered from motion sickness or not, the family's longtime driver surely knew the truth. Still, he politely nodded. The rest of the ride was completely silent. Compared to the liveliness before departure, Jacob now understood the boundaries. After getting off, he immediately rushed away with Vivian. Leaving me alone with the driver after all, at the banquet, few would pay attention to him and Vivian. I nodded at the driver as I stepped out. Just in time to see Jacob and Vivian's retreating figures. So perfectly matched, as if they were destined for each other. In my evening gown, I entered the ballroom and saw Jacob pulling Vivian along, toasting with guests. I took a seat apart. Not long after, several men nearby began talking. "Who's the woman beside Jacob? I've never seen her before." One man clicked his tongue. "You don't know? That's Jiwi, Jacob's brother's wife." Someone expressed surprise. "I thought his brother was dead?" "He is. James married Vivian, many attended the wedding. But a year later, James passed away. Compared to Jacob, James was the real workaholic, rarely attended parties, hardly ever seen with his wife. That's why you wouldn't recognize Vivian now." Another asked, puzzled, "But didn't Jacob have a girlfriend? Why is he out with his sister-in-law?" A man glanced maliciously toward Jacob and Vivian. "Didn't you know they're childhood sweethearts? His brother's gone so naturally, Jacob inherits not only the estate, but also the wife." The group exchanged knowing looks, raised their glasses, and laughed. A chill ran through me. If outsiders could see it so clearly, how blind had I been as someone inside? Thankfully, in 3 days I'd be leaving this place. Suddenly, the man in front of me was punched to the ground. Jacob stood over him. "Furious." Vivian clung to Jacob, trying to stop him, her eyes filled with tears, looking utterly wronged. "Jacob, don't hit him, let them talk."